Imagine lying down on your living room couch for a quick, peaceful afternoon nap. It's the dead of winter in 2015. The sky outside is bleak, heavy gray, and you have finally gotten a day off from your exhausting job as a late night radio reporter. You drift into a deep sleep, but an hour later, the sharp, sudden ding of a text message shatters the silence of your house. You groan, roll over, and reach for your phone on the coffee table. You unlock the screen expecting a work email or a spam message, but instead you see a text from a completely blank, unlisted number that you don't recognize. And when you open it, you read 9 words that will permanently alter the course of your life, ending the normal reality you have known for 57 years. The text message says, quotes, "The castle wants you. The castle is calling you. Come." For a woman named Patricia Darre, living a quiet, orderly life in rural France, this text message was not a joke. It wasn't a marketing gimmick, and it wasn't a wrong number. It was the terrifying, unexplainable beginning of a psychological descent into a world she didn't even believe existed. When Patricia first stared at her phone screen that winter afternoon, she was completely bewildered. She didn't know anyone who owned a castle. She didn't live near any active tourist fortresses, and she certainly hadn't signed up for any wire text alerts. She shook her head, assuming it was a highly specific, poorly targeted prank, deleted the message, locked her phone, and tried to go back to sleep. But her message was officially gone. Over the next 48 hours, a strange heavy anxiety settled over Patricia. She couldn't shake the memory of those 9 words, but things took a far more sinister turns on the third night. Patricia was sitting alone in the kitchen when she suddenly felt the temperature in the room drop drastically. Her breath turned to mist in front of her face, even though the house heating was turned all the way up. And then right next to her right ear, she heard a real physical whisper. It wasn't a thought inside her head. It was an audible, raspy voice echoing in the empty room, and it said the exact same words from the text message. "The castle wants you. Come." Patricia grasped, spinning around, but the kitchen was completely empty. Over the next week, the whispering turned into a relentless, exhausting psychological siege. The voice followed her everywhere. It whispered to her while she was dining. It whispered to her while she tried to do her radio broadcast. It whispered to her in the pitch black of night, keeping her awake until her eyes were bloodshot from sleep deprivation. It was always giving her the exact same command, but now a vivid, overwhelming mental image was being forced into her mind, a vision of a massive, heavily weathered, abandoned medieval fortress surrounded by dense, overgrown woods. Patricia genuinely believed she was losing her mind. She thought she was suffering a severe psychiatric break. But the mental pull towards the specific destination became so violently strong. acting like a magnetic force inside her brain that she realized she only had two choices: check herself into a mental asylum or get into her car and follow the voice to see if this castle actually existing in the real world. Driven by pure desperation, Patricia grabbed her car keys, threw a flashlight into her bag, and hit the road. She didn't have a map or an address. She simply let the terrifying psychic tug in her mind steer the wheels. She drove for hours, deeper and deeper into the isolated rural valley of France, watching the modern world fade away into dark, dense forest. Finally, just as the sun was setting and casting long, bleeding shadow across the road, she turned down a forgotten cracking dirt path. She hit the brakes, her heart hammering against her ribs. Right here, rising out the trees exactly like the horrific vision in her head, was a colossal, abandoned medieval castle. Patricia sat in her idling car, paralyzed with fear. The voice in her head had suddenly gone completely silent, replaced by a heavy, suffocating static. She realized with absolute certainty that the text message she received a week prior had not been sent by a living human being. It hadn't come from a cell phone tower, it had come from here. Stepping out of her car into the freezing night air, Patricia switched on her flashlight, her hands shaking uncontrollably. The massive iron gate of the fortress were rusted shut, but a small gap in the stone perimeter's wall allowed her to squeeze through. As her boots crunched against the dead leaves of the courtyard, the sheer weight of the atmosphere hit her like a physical wall. It felt like she was walking underwater. Suddenly, her flashlight beam began to flicker violently and died, plunging her into pitch darkness, and that's when Patricia realized her psychological awakening wasn't madness at all, it was the sudden, traumatic unlocking of a rare, powerful, mediumistic ability. The silence of the night was instantly shattered. Patricia was suddenly surrounded by the auditory chaoses of the past. She could hear the distinct, terrifying sounds of heavy metal stains dragging across the stone floor, the desperate weeping of women, and the harsh, commanding shouts of medieval guards echoing all around her in the empty courtyard. The centuries-old walls of the fortress were completely saturated with the residual energy, trauma, and spirit of those who had lived, suffered, and been tortured there generations ago. They had been trapped into a loop of agony of hundreds of years, and they had specifically chosen Patricia using the modern technology of her phone to be their bridge and their microphone to the living world. Patricia fled back to her car that night completely traumatized, but her life as an ordinary radio reporter was over. She would spend the rest of her years coming to terms with her terrifying gift, documenting her encounters with the unseen and providing to the world that some places hold on to human tragedy so tightly that he walls themselves will eventually find a way to reach out and send a message and call you in. If this story gave you goosebumps, make sure to hit that like button and drop your thoughts on Patrica's unbelievable experience in the comment below. Be sure to subscribe and turn on all notifications so you never miss another strange, dark, and mysterious true story. Until next time, stay safe.